Senator Ted Cruz. How are you, Senator?
Glenn, I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I was watching last night, and I remembered being at the caucus for you in Iowa, and what a bizarre system that is. Last night, I think the Democrats showed us that, they're on top of the securing the election results. Holy cow.
It is an absolute mess. It is chaos. And, I got to say, I really feel for all of the thousands of volunteers. You've got candidates who've spent a year or more crisscrossing the state. And as you know, you've got volunteers. We had people come from Texas, from all over the country in 2016, basically move to Iowa, stay in dormitories, and go out in blizzards, knocking on doors, making phone calls. They poured their hearts into it. And it's not too much to have at the end of the night an election result.
That's a nice benefit.
I cannot imagine the frustration, the anger they're feeling.
So, Ted, what is your? Let me give you some of the headlines. Republicans gloat over Iowa caucus meltdown. This is from CBS News. You're mentioned there. Are you gloating?
A little bit.
I don't think there's anything.
So it's interesting they say that. I've said a total of one thing today on that, which is I sent a tweet as I was driving in this morning, and my tweet pointed out that Dems today can't even stand at a gymnasium and count who's standing under which sign.
Right.
These are the people they want to put in charge of our health care and everything else in our lives. No, thank you.
No, thank you.
These guys, it ain't that complicated.
Right.
Student council, okay, everyone for Joey, everyone for Susie. Raise your hand, we're done. And these guys can't do that, but don't worry, we'll keep you alive. We'll keep your mom alive. We'll decide everything in your life.
No, we're smarter than you.
The age of the socialists put these geniuses in charge of everything that matters to you.
So the other Washington Post said, conservatives spread false claims on Twitter about electoral fraud as Iowans prepare to caucus.
At this point, we don't have any evidence of fraud. And I had an old boss of mine who used to say, never explain anything with malice that could be explained with incompetence.
Yes.
I think these guys just screwed up.
Yeah.
It's actually one of the reasons you and I are both really skeptical of big government.
Right.
Because it screws everything up.
Right.
So let's have it do what it needs to do. But other than that, leave everything to the people. And it's, I'm sure there were a bunch of smart people who had a great plan, and they had an app. I think it's called Shadow. So now
Shadow, if that doesn't give you confidence.
So now apparently these are the Peter Pan Democrats because they can't find their shadow.
Right. Okay, so let me go into just because I think it's incompetence. I don't think there's anything going on. But if
on the other hand, it may be the secretive Joe Biden Illuminati working to snuff out the Bernie revolution.
Right.
That's entirely possible too.
Yeah. Right. If I
had blue hair and dreadlocks and things pierced all over my face, I would believe that.
I would believe that too, especially after the paper, the leading paper, they always come out in Iowa, Des Moines Register, and they come out and they say, right the day before, here are the poll numbers. Well, we now know that the poll numbers that were spiked were this, and this has now been confirmed. Bernie Sanders, 22, Elizabeth Warren, 18, Pete Buttigieg at 16, Joe Biden at 13.
Wow.
So you put that together with what happened last time, where they really were, torching, doing everything they could, it seemed, to take down Bernie Sanders. You're a Bernie Sanders fan. You're even a Elizabeth Warren fan. This does nothing to help you believe in the party.
Well, look, there's no doubt that the Democratic Party machinery is terrified of Bernie and they're terrified of Warren. And the problem is, the base of their party is enthralled with crazy leftist ideas. The base of their party is angry. They've got pitchforks. They've got torches in the street. And so we saw 4 years ago the Democratic Party did everything they could to stop Bernie then. And part of it is, look, Democrats are statists. They're authoritarians. They believe in centralized power. So they have things like superdelegates. The Republican side, we don't have superdelegates.
Right.
The Democrats have had a big chunk of their vote to decide who their presidential nominee is are lifelong career politicians who are called superdelegates who get to decide.
And they did that after Reagan won. They saw that the Reagan Revolution changed the Republican Party, and they said, we don't want that to happen to us.
Inevitably, statists and authoritarians don't trust the people. So the rhetoric is always the people.
Right.
We care about the people, so put me in charge of the people. That's their message.
Right.
Someone that actually believes in the people said, all right, how about let's leave the people in charge of themselves and get government. Jefferson referred to the Constitution as chains to bind the mischief of government. The modern Democratic Party, they don't believe there's any mischief to be bound.
Right.
And it all comes down to they have incredible faith in their own ability. They're smarter than you are. They know better than you do. And it's a combination of elitism and condescension and willingness to employ brute force. If you don't disagree with them, they will use the coercive power of the state to make you agree with them.
Right. So let's switch gears here. First of all, any indication on when they're going to have a account?
No clue.
They keep saying, last night they were like, no, we're just verifying. It doesn't take you this long to verify. This is worse than Florida.
I have no idea. So I will say, as you know, I've sort of entered your world a little bit in the last couple of weeks because we've launched a podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz. It went from zero, non-existent,
number one,
to it skyrocketed to number one in the country.
Yeah.
We were going to film a podcast last night. We were sitting there to film a podcast. Michael Knowles, who I think is coming in shortly afterwards. So Michael and I were there in the studio, and the whole plan is when the Iowa results come in, we'll go on and talk about it. Mm-hmm. So we're sitting there.
And waiting.
And we're sitting there. And we're sitting there. I think we sat there 3 hours, and we finally said, well, I don't think we're getting results. Right. Now, the nice thing about a podcast, you don't have a hard time. It's not like I go on at 9, and it's like, all right, if we don't have Iowa results, I'll tell you what, let's wait and do it tomorrow. Let's actually know what the results are. I went to bed figuring I'd know when I woke up.
Me too.
Who the heck knows?
Yeah. All right. Let's switch to impeachment. First of all, were you mocking Nancy? Please say yes. Were you mocking Nancy Pelosi's hand clap? There on the Senate floor.
Of course.
Okay, good. All right.
Although I did have folks who were wondering if I was paying up on losing a bet for the Nationals Astros because the Nationals did the whole baby shark thing.
Right.
So it could have been that.
Could have been that.
So what happened? I was talking to Mitch McConnell, and we were talking to a couple of other senators who were there, and we were talking about State of the Union. And it wasn't clear when the vote in impeachment was going to be, and if it ended up being after the State of the Union, which it is, it's going to be tomorrow. There was some discussion about the possibility that Trump might cancel the event, cancel the State of the Union, say, I'll wait until after you vote on that. And that was being discussed a little bit. And we were saying, well, what if Pelosi won't invite him back? What if she says, okay, you canceled it, you don't get a State of the Union? So we were talking about, well, we'll just invite him to the Senate. We can do the State of the Union in the Senate. Right. And then I was looking around because the Senate floor is pretty small.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, where would we put the House members? I guess we could put them up in the gallery. And Mitch said, yeah, we could stick Nancy back behind the TV cameras. That'd drive her crazy. and that's the point where I said, now, Mitch, you got to give her some respect. She did invent a little clap. and so we were laughing at that. But that was the context of the conversation.
So this is the worst political strategy on her part I've ever seen. The Democrats, does this taint Trump at all? Free Trump from this? Are they going to continue to do this? In his second term, what are the results of what is the meaning of all of this?
So look, I agree with you. It was a serious blunder. I think Pelosi knows that. She didn't want to go down the road of impeachment. Less than a year ago, both Pelosi and Jerry Nadler both said, you can't have a partisan impeachment. It tears the country apart. It divides us. I think they didn't want to do this. The reality they're facing is their base is angry. The hard left base, they're motivated by rage. Hatred of Donald Trump is their all-consuming vision and passion.
Right.
And I think the Democrats had no choice. Pelosi felt she was basically a hostage of her angry base. So they went down this road. I got to say, where we are politically, I think the chances of Donald Trump being reelected have risen dramatically.
Oh, I think so, too.
And it's very much the same as look, when Republicans impeached Bill Clinton, that was a mistake. Republicans overreached, and that got Bill Clinton reelected. It was an enormous political benefit to Bill Clinton for the Republicans to overreach and try to impeach him. The American people said, enough already. Focus on what matters to us. Focus on jobs. Focus on our future, our family. Right. I think that contrast is playing out beautifully. And so my advice to the president for tonight, for State of the Union, is the same thing, is be positive and optimistic and lay out a future. And just don't even talk about the impeachment. Just look forward. Here's what we've accomplished, and here's where we're going.
I don't know if the president, first year Donald Trump, could have done that. But he's changed. He has become disciplined. And there's a lot of worry from Republicans that I've heard that are saying, dear God, please don't say anything. But I think he's so close to the finish line, and he knows the gravity of this.
I hope so. I've given him that advice directly. I know a lot of people have. I will say, last week during impeachment, it was interesting. I was at the White House twice last week with the president. The first time was for the announcement of his effort to achieve peace in the Middle East. And it was an announcement with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right.
It was a fabulous event.
Great.
The next day, I was back there because he was signing the USMCA, the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Trade Agreement. And the contrast of those two were really striking, where he's working on substance, he's working on policies that make a difference in the economy, make a difference in jobs for farmers, for ranchers, for manufacturers. He's working on issues that matter, like world peace. And the Democrats, they're just a mob wanting to attack the president. I think that contrast, frankly, Bill Clinton drew that same contrast. He did the same.
Right.
He focused on...
Exactly right.
You remember MoveOn.org?
Yep.
Rose up during that, and the whole message of MoveOn.org was move on. Like
I know.
And ironically, MoveOn.org is actively supporting impeachment now and is raising money for it. And it is kind of like, did you guys...
Do you remember the name? You remember where you came from?
Read the name of your group. Maybe start a different group. Like, if you're going to do that...
StayHere.com. Stay right here. Dwell on this.com. You told me last time you were on, you said, I think I'm going to vote for witnesses. What changed your mind?
So what I have been saying from the beginning is that if we go down the road of witnesses, that we needed to respect the principle of reciprocity. In other words, we couldn't do what the House did, have a one-sided show trial where only prosecution witnesses are allowed and you block every defense witness, which is what the House Democrats did. And so what I early on was urging my colleagues to do is, if we go down the road to witnesses, and I initially just kind of kept my mind open on whether we would have them or not, but I said, if we go down the road, we need to do it even-handedly. We need to be fair. We need to respect due process. That means if the prosecution gets a witness, the defense gets a witness. That means if they get John Bolton, then the president gets to call Hunter Biden. I think that principle was right. I think it was valuable, but I think it also ended up playing a big part in the final decision not to go down the road of additional witnesses. And that ended up being an important vote. I spent a lot of time within the conference trying to get us to 51 votes to say enough is enough. The American people are tired of this. There were 18 witnesses who testified in the House proceeding. We heard hour after hour of witness testimony of documents, the most important documents in the entire impeachment proceeding, which is the transcript of the call that's at issue here, the president declassified and released. And so we had a ton of evidence before us, and on all the evidence, the president hadn't committed an impeachable crime. He hadn't met, the House managers didn't meet the constitutional standard of high crimes or misdemeanors. And so I, at the end of the day, agreed that we didn't need additional witnesses because they hadn't proven their case. But I think laying out reciprocity, making clear that this will go both ways. I got to tell you, one of the consequences of that, I think there were a whole bunch of Democrats who were terrified of going down the road of witnesses. They all voted for it, but I think that it was one of those instances in the Senate where they voted yes and were hoping the answer was no.
Correct.
Because if we'd gone down the road of witnesses, if we'd been hearing testimony from Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, I think it would have been Democrats are terrified of the evidence of corruption. And Glenn, let me commend you. You were one of the very first to dig in to the substance of Burisma and the evidence of corruption and lay it out. Everyone else caught up to you, but as is often the case, you were ahead of the pack by a good chunk.
I will tell you that I have a special coming up on Thursday that I will share with you off the air. The evidence that we have, it's beyond anything that we found. We found links through money laundering. We found the money laundering leaks, and there was something else going on that Congress needs to be aware of, and I'll share that with you.
Good. I look forward
to
it.
The air. Will there be a investigation on how this thing happened? The whistleblower, Schiff, any of that? Will anybody pay?
So I hope so. A couple of nights ago, I had on my podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham. And so invited him to, and actually Lindsey and I had a lot of fun on the podcast. It was very funny that we film in a basement studio here in D.C. And Lindsey was cracking jokes, going, "All right, if no one sees me again, I'm in an underground basement in Washington." And look, it's pretty low budget. So we got these giant microphones. We had shag carpet, and he's like looking around, going, "Wait, if you guys are number one, who the heck is number two? Some guy in a van by the park? Like, what's wrong with you?" Anyway, I say all of that to say in answer to your question, Lindsey said on the show that he wanted to see investigations into Hunter Biden, into Burisma, and he wanted to see it on foreign relations. Jim Risch chairs foreign relations. Lindsey chairs judiciary. It's got to be one of the committee chairmen that goes down the road. Yeah. I'm on both committees. So my answer to that is yes.
Good.
We should investigate because the law should apply fairly to everyone, regardless of party, and people are frustrated. How come people could commit corruption during the prior administration and get off scot-free? That's not right. There needs to be accountability.
Thank you so much. Senator Ted Cruz will be watching you tonight at the State of the Union and listening to your new podcast. You can get it wherever podcasts are found. #1 now on Apple Podcasts.